Welcome everybody to Event Icons week episode, 169, which I feel like is getting close to a big milestone, Alex. So we're excited today to chat with the icons of the event industry. I'm Lindsay from Nifty Method and Pathable Event Apps, and joining me is everybody's favorite, Alex Flaxen.
Hey everybody.
Today we're going to be talking about how to source and find the best value for destination for a venue. Deciding fun event space is always one of those things that can make or break your event, because if everybody hates where the column is located or doesn't want to walk outside because it's scary, no one wants to be there. It's no fun at all. So we brought in a professional from the DMC world joining us. Are you senior vice president or just a vice president? How important are you, Rutger?
Let's leave the senior away from it.
Yeah. Okay. So I won't give you a promotion, but Brecker Horn is a vice president of global sales from Ovation DMC. He's an experienced, strategic, and hands-on dynamic business manager with extensive international experience in optimizing, operating, and influencing an executive management level in events sector. Originally from the Netherlands, Rutger has worked in Barcelona, Switzerland, and most recently relocated to run the DMC offices in New York City. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, so you know what that means. It's time for another episode of #Event Icons, presented by Endless Events. The show where you get to ask the icons of the events industry anything. Just go to www.event-icons.com to ask questions. Our iconic guests will answer them live during the entire show. Before we get started, the more people we have watching, the better the conversation. So please help share #Event Icons on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Just tell your friends to watch at www.event-icons.com. Now, without any further delay, this is #Event Icons.
All right. And we're back. What have I forgotten? I always forget one of the announcements. Did I forget anything, Alex?
No, that's it. Welcome to the show. We're really excited. So this is your first time as a guest, and we ask all of our first-time guests the same question because everyone has such a different, unique story. So we want to know what got you into the events industry, and if you weren't in the events industry, what would you be doing?
Interesting. Well, I mean, how I got into the industry is an easy answer. I started my professional career actually in 2005, where I moved from Amsterdam, Holland, to Barcelona in Spain. And I actually started working pretty quick in the sports sector, and sports being organizing sports events in Spain and Southern Europe for professional international sports teams that wanted to organize their winter breaks in the south of Europe. From there, I moved on into the sports industry, actually, towards EuroLeague. And EuroLeague is kind of the equivalent of NBA in the US for the top tier sports teams in basketball. And I was the head of ticketing there. So, everything linked to the event itself, to the ticketing strategy, to hospitality during the events, et cetera. And after that, I rolled into the DMC world in Ovation, Spain. And in the DMC world, I'm now nearly 10 years active. So rolling in from sports into the DMC world, into the events industry is kind of the background. And what I would be doing if I would not be in the events industry, I think my big passion is sports. So you probably find me either in my dreams as a professional athlete, but you probably see me in some kind of position inside the sports industry. But what that is I can keep on dreaming, but maybe it happens someday. Or maybe I'm stuck in the events industry for the rest of my life. That's the question.
That wouldn't be so bad.
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all.
So DMC, that's kind of one of those things where I think there may not necessarily be a common understanding for some of our people listening and watching. Can you explain a little bit about what a DMC and in particular what Ovation DMC does and what it brings as a partnership to the event world?
Yeah. Now, the common term DMC, if you go beyond the realm of the events industry, people would indeed look at you and say, DMC what exactly? Destination management company. Now, we are normally the arms and legs of the event planners when they head out to an international destination where they're not familiar. In other words, a large corporate event moving from their local destination into an incentive event anywhere around the world. You have no idea what's going on the ground where you'll be hosting your event. And this is where the DMC comes in with their local knowledge, with their local contacts, with their local connections, with everything that the planners need to get their events rolling. And that is, it's an extended team of the event planner on the ground that can, help in a lot of ways, because the moment that the event planner is hosting something at a hotel, that is manageable. But the moment that they set foot outside of the hotel property, you have no idea what's going to hit you in terms of, it can be a strike of the taxi drivers. It can be any other problem that might occur. And for those local understanding itself, you need a DMC to be prepared and to prepare you as an event planner as well for all those local destination issues or solutions.
And I think that's an important point too, because, choosing that destination, we often do get wrapped up so many times in just looking at the hotel or the, congressional center or wherever that we're going to have the event. So, what are some of the things that you're always looking for when you're checking out destinations you enjoy recommending or trying a new destination for the first time?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things to look out for in different destinations. I've over the last, let's say, 10 years, I traveled, of course, all over the world, not only for conferences, but also for the events that Ovation is organizing anywhere around the world. And what you normally look at is the teams on site, the venues that destinations have to offer, the access to those venues, the quality of the hotels. The people, because in the end it's all about the people, the differences in culture, how do people approach you, your personal experience of a destination brings so much value that you can share towards the planners and towards the industry itself to explain what type of destination or what type of city an event best can take place in. So those kind of things are, it's something that when you are in the events industry, it's kind of a given. You automatically experience that and you see that and you live by it. But I mean, in my case, I need to know my destinations. Even though we offer 100+ destinations worldwide, it's impossible for me to have that feeling for all of those destinations worldwide. But it's in my blood to kind of understand more about each destination and what the destination can offer for the planners.
Yeah, I mean, I think of like the details pieces. I'm in Mumbai right now, and to go 5 kilometers, it literally takes you 2 hours. And that's a fascinating. I was telling the Event Icons team earlier, I was like, I cannot imagine putting a group of 10+ people on a bus and trying to take them anywhere. And, it's just like the logistics pieces and the details pieces that on the ground team can be so valuable.
It is.
What is your most favorite city to run an event in North America or globally? Pick one, anyone.
Anyone?
All of the things. Yeah,
Yes.
None of the above.
Anyone. I mean, in both globally, I mean, North America, the US in general. I mean, there's so many places. I mean, listen, I'm a warm weather guy, so I'd rather go south than head north, depending on the time of the year, obviously. Austin is a great place with there's so much going on there. The atmosphere is amazing. At the same time, San Diego, at the same time, it depends. What are you looking for? Are you looking for an incentive destination? Are you looking for a meeting? Are you looking for just a hotel space, the convention center? Do you need to be close to the water or not? Listen, San Diego is one of my favorite cities. Austin is an amazing city as well. At the same time, there's so much history, there's so much culture there. But I mean, at the same time, if you head east, Cape Cod, the islands of Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard, those are places that give something special. It depends on your group. It depends on what you want to do. But if I want to spend my holidays, I look for the sun and I head south. And that's maybe that's me, but there's so many places to pick from. I mean, I'm only here for a year now, since June last year. I've been lucky to travel all over the States for quite a few years already. Haven't seen anything yet, of course, because of the size of the US. But those are the cities or the places I would pick to go to or to host an event in. Then globally, I mean, the world is your oyster, literally. There is so many places. I'm from Europe. I'm from the Netherlands. I'm from Amsterdam originally. Having lived in Spain, having lived in Switzerland, places like, I mean, my favorite place would be Tuscany, hands down. The wine, the people, the culture, the little villages are just priceless. At the same time, if you want to, if we move forward, God forbid, 30 years from now, you would see me on this little bench in Granada, close to Seville, enjoying my retirement. From a personal perspective, I would head to the south to Tuscany, combined with the south of Spain. At the same time, Sydney is one of my favorite places to go to. Where do I start? Indonesia, my roots. Bali, yes. I don't know, Lindsay. There's too much.
This is like picking your favorite child. We've backed you into a corner, haven't we?
Yes, completely.
Well, and I think it's interesting. It's an interesting question, right? Because for those who don't understand the difference between a DMO, a DMC, and a CVB, you'd never ask that question to the CVB because you always know their answer. But for those who don't know the difference, can you kind of share with us what makes a DMO different than a CVB and a DMC, and what that alphabet soup is?
That is a huge alphabet soup. What it literally comes down to is nowadays CVBs, move towards the direction of a DMO, where a DMO is more kind of a marketing, let's say a marketing local. It's a marketing CVB. In other words, it's so much more than only a convention bureau. It's, let's say, the marketing tool of a destination that goes so much further than a convention bureau, a CVB. CVBs and, let's say, CVBs/DMOs and DMCs work a lot of times together hand in hand to sell their destination. Where CVBs are more, let's say, governmental driven, tourism driven. They take on leisure and the professional travel at the same time. Where DMCs most of the time are focused more on the professional side of it. Some do the leisure as well. It's a nice soup of people that share the same idea of selling the destination, of trying to get more business or more people to their destination. And that is what the soup is all about. It's all about creating those synergies, I think, between DMOs, DMCs, and CVBs. In a nutshell, Alex.
So when you're thinking about that, adding another acronym in there, would you use an RFP? Like when you're working with planners, whether it's a first time or a long time, a lot of people go, we need this 15-page form, but really you're just looking for particular things. Is that something where you've seen the RFPs be successful, or you advise them to go with partners to recommend, like yourself, to kind of use the network to find the destination and ultimately the right venue? What's your favorite approach to getting the right place and the right space?
I love the word RFP, of course. Actually, I hate the word RFP. It is a request. It is a request for proposal, to be exact. But that's pretty obvious in our industry. The moment that RFPs arrive, I do go in detail through the RFP, but always my first response is pick up the phone and understand a little bit more about the event itself. I mean, it can be written down beautifully. But if you don't understand the objective of the event, the objective of the meeting, the objective of the incentive, you're not able to grasp the entire idea of the event. You need to understand everything around that RFP to be able to accommodate the right venue. Is there a theme? Is there an annual theme? Is it the end of the year? Is it why are the sales representatives, why are they awarded for their incentive? What was the objective from their side? Was there an umbrella theme throughout the year that is not inside the RFP mentioned? There's so many things that you need to know around the RFP to be able to offer the right solution to your clients. Now that being said, when you know the theme, you probably think, my God, I wish I wouldn't know the theme, because my idea is always to create something around that theme and to see if there's venues that connect to that theme. Just to be able to connect the theme to more to the destination, of course. Why would they pick certain destinations when there was a completely different theme? The theme was sun in the summer, something, and then they go to Iceland or to London, where it always rains. It needs to be connected with each other, and my approach is always to find that connection and to find out more about the RFP and about the idea, the objectives of the meeting itself.
I mean, that sounds like there's a lot of trust that goes in, gets involved with that, because from my experience with event planners and having been one in a past life, the event's your baby, right? Like there's a lot of control that you feel like you have to have. And so I feel like working with someone else to source the venues, there has to be a trust element there. And I think that's one of the things that makes it interesting also, is that, especially for events that travel, you can find different destinations and different venues every year. And develop that trust relationship, right? Because really you're becoming part of their team.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly it. I mean, trust is everything. In our industry, it's about people. The moment that you lose trust, it's done. I mean, then the connection breaks, for the good or for the bad. I mean, it breaks. And building that trust doesn't go very, very quick. You need to have that experience together. You need to have had that same challenge or that same success, a shared story, to be able to trust somebody or trust somebody's services. Now, I mean, in my case, essentially what we as event suppliers, literally, because in the end, DMC is a supplier of either an event planner at an agency or a corporate event planner. And I mean, essentially, we are selling air. We are selling a service, an overseas service to a team that they don't know. The only person that they have in front of them is me, selling 100+ destinations worldwide. So how can you create that trust and that feeling of extended team by the first conversation? And that doesn't happen very often. There has to be a personal click, I think. There has to be a professional click to make that first step into, okay, let's try and let's work together. Let's have you as our extended team overseas, and let's work with your team in Indonesia, in China, in Australia, or wherever. And the moment that you have done that event all together, that trust has a small foundation from which you build on further. And that's a little bit, as you say, the trust is key in our industry.
I think, we met Brecker at IMEX Frankfurt this year, and I think that's one of the reasons why trade shows like that continue to be so valuable to our industry, because it was, literally just a random conversation at the site night party where we were introduced and you were kind of sharing some of the experiences, but it's, there were several other people there who were validating that, and we tend to be pretty xenophobic, right? We don't want to trust someone who doesn't come with at least 3 references. And so not only seeing you face to face and learning about those experiences, but hearing other people around going, and yes, and this and that, it's extremely, it helps that control problem that the planners suffer from, because we've seen the whites of your eyes and you don't appear to be blowing smoke quite yet.
No, sometimes I think that you either should first meet each other on the social level rather than on a professional level, because you understand so much more of a person and his personality than somebody in his professional capacity. Building from that social capacity into, so what do you do? And that is such a different way of interacting and starting a conversation about how I can help you, how we can help you on producing your next event. And I think this is also how we started to talk. It's funny how such conversations go from a side net conversation into a podcast like this. There's so many stories to share, and I think those industry events, and we're talking about side night, we're talking about IMAX. There's so many trade shows and so many events that you meet great people, and you get to know them there. And socially, sometimes first step, sometimes it's the other way around. But creating great relationships worldwide is just an absolute plus to have, to know so many people.
Absolutely, because especially like when you think about sourcing a destination and like the process that just goes into it from the planner's perspective, so many times there's a lot of suppliers, right? And so it becomes, for that first professional outreach, especially if you're using an RFP, it's almost adversarial, because you are playing defense. When you send it out, you're going to get all these proposals back. So, what are some of the ways that you can partner with a planner, saying you've got that professional and personal relationship to help them sift through the noise? Let's say you've gotten passed in. What are some of the things that you look for when you're part of the team? With the network that I've built over so many years, I literally know who to contact. What happens if a planner goes to a destination where I don't have any contacts? What happened in the past is that one of the maybe most underestimated, I'm not sure if it's underestimated, maybe it's the wrong word, but CVBs are so key in terms of trust and relations, and so much that they can offer, even free of charge, that is so helpful and so resourceful in destinations where you're trying to organize your event. They have their preferred, let's say, DMCs. They have their preferred contacts or their direct contacts at hotels. There's a wealth of information with them that sometimes just stays untapped, and that is something that an event planner that needs to be his go-to. At the same time, we work so much with the hotel industry, with all of the big brands and all of the big chains, that we work hand in hand with the hotels at the same time. Knowing what's going on in any of the destinations, knowing and advising the planners of the best hotels or the best venues, a lot of times also goes through the hotels, obviously, and that's more common in the US, I think, than in Europe, for example, where the wealth of information and the network together with hotels broadens the scope of everybody, and it's also such a wealth of information that is there. So CVBs and hotels are so key for our industry in general, I think.
So I think that's interesting, because you do have these relationships that are already built with the venues, right? So because there's kind of a split loyalty. Like you have so many different venues and you want to bring them all some business. What do you and your team typically look for when sourcing a venue, no matter what the type of event is? Do you look for customer service, ease of access? What are those unique features that you try to keep in mind?
Well, of course, I mean, this question goes back, of course, to a lot of the logistics in terms of, what is the size, there's all of that. So what is the access to the event? Does the Lindsay's now in Mumbai. You shouldn't travel that far through the city to get to an event venue. So it all depends on where you're based, where do you need to go, what do you want to do, what is the group size to get there. What is the group size to get into the venue? But overall, if there are then still 10 venues to pick from, which one would I pick? It would be the one that would be most, most flexible in terms of setup. It would be feedback and customer service and the feedback that you get from the venues is so key. To get quick information towards the planner is key. All of that together, your destination. So the moment that you have that small selection of venues, you know exactly which one you would recommend to your customer for sure. It goes through a few steps to get there, but that's always a hand-in-hand project that you work with the planner.
Absolutely. Do you oftentimes go on the site visits? I know this is truly tactical, but this is something that's always fascinating because meet San Jose. They have a destination management company that works very closely with them, and the entire city sells as one. So all the hotels and the convention center, it's one entity, and the DMCs are part of that even though you pay out differently versus say Visit Minneapolis or how it is in, parts of London. They each have their own favorite hotels and it's very fragmented. And so is that something where there are certain clients that you typically do the site visits with, or is it something that you're like, these are the suggestions, the recommendations, the things to kind of look for, and here's, where we hope you land, let us know where we can help you next?
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on the requirements, but yes, like San Jose, Switzerland is a good example as well, where Lausanne and Montreux in the French-speaking part of Switzerland are just a round bubble of convention centers and hotels that know each other so well, and they're so well connected that it's easy to maneuver, and everybody knows what's going on. Everybody's kind of selling the same destination. Now, of course, Switzerland is a different subject because the CVB is truly strong and truly centralized and takes care of their partners, and is one of the blessings to work with. But there are so many other destinations where it's truly fragmented, and to find, in the end, it comes down to relationships that you have. For specific events, for specific incentives, there's always that top 5 preferred hotels or event venues in each destination. As long as you know that, as long as you are aware of all of those factors, it shouldn't be that difficult to maneuver in. But you need to have the right relationships. You need to work with them. You need to have that specific buying power on the local level as well to leverage all of that. And being so well hands-on in the destination and working together with all of your partners is key to get to that point.
Yes. So tell us a little bit more about Switzerland, because you were sharing a story where you've partnered with the Michelin Guide to do an incentive event, and I know you were based there. So how did that kind of come about, and what role did each one of the groups play, especially in producing this new event?
Yeah, I think this was one of the key examples of how a destination works hand in hand to provide the customer, the planner, the best experience possible. This was, the tire brand Michelin has the Michelin Guide. Not many people know that it actually derives from the tires. Why would a Michelin?
I literally just found this out like 3 months ago.
I didn't realize they used to do handwritten itineraries. When I was watching the episode, I was like, that is fascinating. I love that.
They did. So yeah, the Michelin Brothers a century ago found out that, you know, if you want to sell your tires, you need to sell the travel, the experience. You need to go from A to B, and during that travel, you need to eat as well. In a nutshell, Ryan Hilly from Michelin can tell you the entire story behind this, obviously. But the idea, and that amazing marketing idea that came already at the beginning of the 1900s, to connect the tire brand, the traveling with the restaurants, and so it happened. Now that still people have question marks of that connection between Michelin and the Michelin Guide, is something that they probably have to work on, and I know that they're working very hard on. But the moment that that Michelin reached out, the Michelin Guide reached out to the Switzerland CVB, actually sitting here in New York, saying we want to go to Switzerland, we want to do a driving experience, and we have no idea how to handle that, or, you know, what route should we take, and you know, then it all started. So then the CVB in Switzerland connected Michelin to us, and we all stayed in contact. We all had meetings together, also because smartly, and I think the Swiss CVB is very strong in that. Their marketing campaign of a few years ago was the Grand Tour of Switzerland, which was essentially a road trip through Switzerland, hitting all of the UNESCO World Heritage sites, the amazing views, the beautiful roads, so many things that you can see in Switzerland, and they connected it in a circle of about, I would say, 800 miles through such a small country. Now, with the Grand Tour as their marketing campaign in mind, Michelin wanted to invite their top distributors to a driving incentive, taking part of that Grand Tour route, and offering that to let's say 5 or 6 back-to-backs, and putting them in amazing sports cars, and driving that route with the Grand Tour of Switzerland in mind, and every time visiting these beautiful restaurants for lunch and dinner, which was, let's say, a perfect combination between the marketing campaign of a CVB, actually, you know, then sold actually in the US, brought to Switzerland, and then combined with all the local knowledge and the needs that you have to know about your local destination in Switzerland, to create a program together like this. So this is a great example of how a planner connects with CVB, CVB connects with DMC, and creates that event all together, and it was an amazing experience in total.
So, fun fact for those who don't know, the Michelin Guide was one of the first examples of content marketing. Fun fact.
Thank you. And Alex Fact, we call that probably, right?
Sure.
Yeah, no, and that's it. They were one of the first ones that came up with this brilliant idea, and it's still going on. It's still moving. I mean, the Michelin Guide is still the reference point in the world for quality food, and that's pretty amazing how they came from tires to restaurants.
And so we'll be doing a full episode with the Michelin Guide and Ryan Hilly in September, so be sure to tune back into that one. But let's get back to Rutger. So we talk about food all day long, and then we'll get into like all of the things we need, right? It's just end up on the Instagram page scrolling through it. It's a bad habit, y'all. So what is a destination that you haven't produced an event in or worked with that you would love to, that's on your bucket list?
Well, I mean, we're in 100+ destinations, so we practically did events everywhere around the world. Literally, we did events everywhere around the world. I have to say, I have not visited all 100 of them, but the Galapagos is one of that is definitely on my bucket list. Even though we're in close connections also with the cruises, it is one of those places that you have to visit, and is not only possible via cruise, but also visiting Ecuador and then having the flight towards the Galapagos Islands. It is definitely on my bucket list. New Zealand is not a place I've been to yet, which is also on my bucket list. Again, events, yes, we've done them. Yes, I've seen pictures. Yes, I've sent clients that way, but I've never been able to join them and experience the event together with them in that destination. So, and I mean, apart from these two, there's at least a dozen of them that I still, we still are working on our strategic partnerships in Africa, for example. A place I desperately want to go to as well and visit more. So, if we start about bucket list, I'm not sure if this hour of podcast is going to be enough for me talking.
So on the flip side of that, what's the most interesting venue you've worked in so far?
Interesting good or interesting bad, but without having to name names if you don't want to. We've all seen that place. Everyone's been there. Come on.
Oh yes. No, I've been there as well, but it needs to be worth mentioning as well. And I think more on the positive side is something I'm looking at the moment. I have to refer back to Switzerland again, where the Swiss Tech Convention Center is a relatively new building. It's a convention center with an auditorium of about 3,000 people that fit in there. And normally the auditoriums are these stands that go up a little bit and kind of take away the multi-purpose of it, because it's an auditorium, so you sit people down and people listen, people stand up and they go away again. Now I know there's been other buildings built in the last few years as well, but Swiss Tech was one of the first ones that actually built an auditorium that could move from a steep floor into a leveled floor. In other words, all of the chairs were flipped 180 degrees and went down, and all of the levels could level off entirely horizontally at base, meaning you really create a multi-purpose space in which you can either make an auditorium smaller, or you can, let the people out of the auditorium after, a presentation. Half an hour later, they come in and they see completely built a gala dinner venue for 1,500 people. All on the same level and on the same floor. So if you think about the technology and the advancements, the enhancements of venues in general, I think that is a good example of the multi-purpose venue of the future, that you can bring it all in one.
Over to the gallery view. I'm getting notes. Do we have anything that's come in from the audience, Alex? Any questions?
So I'm looking right now. Yeah, so we have a question. When sourcing for venue flexible in terms of setup, feedback, customer service, these are all important. So looks like that was a comment, not a question. But
correct. The comment is very correct, of course.
They're just agreeing with your brilliance is basically what's happening here.
But I think that's fascinating, the fact that technology exists now. And when you're seeing these unique venues for the first time, when you have an option like that, how do you go back to something that doesn't have that? Like, I would just want to sell that to everyone. Like, if there was another option that didn't have it, I don't think I'd want to be there.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, you're absolutely right. At the same time, this is only in Lausanne, Switzerland. So, the amount of times that any specific client you have, or a customer you have, or the event that you have yourself, if you go abroad, not very often would you go back to the same venue. You would either pick a different destination or a different venue, because then people will say, or your guests will say, or your attendees will say, are we going to go back again? So you need to reinvent yourself. I think you need to keep on evolving and try something new every time. So yeah, I mean, yes, it's difficult to walk away from. At the same time, every event is different. An auditorium space that flips into a gala dinner space is amazing to have, but not everybody needs to have both options at the same time for their events. So there's so many variables. I mean, you've been a planner yourself. Not many events. It all depends. I mean, you have indeed sometimes the same meetings, but you wouldn't necessarily go to the same destination twice. So you need to keep on changing everything and your mindset and the destinations and the venues that you're looking for, and innovate.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's it. I'm done.
Are you sure? Lagging. So you bring up an interesting point there, especially when you were speaking earlier about picking up the phone and talking to the event prof about what is their strategic goal for the event. And, in a lot of our conversations, many times we find when we pose that question, there's a lot of, they're like, well, we do this event every year. We look to you to help kind of advise us on what the best fit is. So when you have someone who maybe they've become stuck in a rut, or they're new to the industry, or they're just looking for that guidance, how do you help them find the right, or how do you uncover their goal, first of all? Because I think that's an important one to help them get there, but really break down what they're truly looking for, instead of just like, well, it's just an association annual event and we always do it like this.
Yeah, I mean, this comes down to the new fashionable term, of course, in the events industry, the event design. Where are you now? Where do you want to go? What do you want to? What do you want the attendees to go back with to their home or back to their desk? What is the experience that you want them to remember? What is important to you for them to experience in the destination that they're going to? Do they want to be really involved in the local culture, the local destination, the people? What do they want to experience when they're overseas, or when they're in a different destination? These are key questions for the planner to answer, and if the planner doesn't have a clear idea, you need to create that together. And the way to create it together is firstly understanding where they've been in the past, what they've done in the past, how that has gone. So it's all about the history of the event itself. Has the event taken place many times? Is it a new event? It's all about, in the end, it's all about the experience that you want to give the attendees, and what they should go back with what idea and how it sits in their mind. And a lot of times this goes back to their experience locally in the destination, with the cultural aspects, with the food, with the real local things that they can see, taste, and feel. A lot of times people say it was the people, because the people were so nice and the service was amazing, and the little quaint villages that they visited, the medieval feel of it, the sun, the sea, the beach, the relaxedness, the music. There's so many touch points that you can link your attendees and your guests on that they can go back with brilliant new experiences.
So I read a very interesting article from Adrian Seeger a couple of days ago, where he was talking about that experience design and thinking about it. And he said, it really does, the destination doesn't matter. We talk a lot about experience design, but I would challenge anyone inside the industry to say that it's more than just us creating a place where these two people can talk. But to hear you talk about it, the destination always becomes a participant inside of that. So it's participating in the conversation. So, what would you say to someone who's coming off of that article and really struggling with trying to wrap their arms around how to integrate that in?
Yeah, I mean, it's always difficult. It goes back to the aim of and the objective of the planner. It depends on the event itself. If the event is a meeting, let's say a leadership meeting in an X destination, yes, a lot of time is spent in the hotel or in a meeting room, and that's somewhere that you need to create. You create the experience inside the room, with the experience design of the event itself. But why would you go to the other side of the world to be in a meeting room all day? And that's where I think that's where we come in, especially as a DMC, to create that local experience and to create that extra, that extra feeling of being somewhere and being immersed a little bit during your a 2-night trip to Bali, into the local culture and into the people and to meet the people and to have that atmosphere and create that experience. So I mean, I understand where you come from and what you mentioned there, Lindsay. At the same time, I think it's a lost opportunity if you don't immerse yourself or at least experience where you are at that moment. And that's my 2 cents.
So I have a question that gets back to the destination and thinking globally. I took a negotiations class in grad school, and a lot of the things we talked about was different cultures and the way that different internationally, how different people will negotiate with each other. And I have not had the opportunity to negotiate internationally, but I imagine it's a very unique experience depending on where you're going. And it would be quite intimidating if I had to do such a thing. Is that something that a DMC helps with? After they get the destination and after they figure out what the venues are that they want, is negotiation something that you assist with as far as contracting and all of that fun stuff?
It's a lot of fun stuff, Alex. Yes, absolutely. In short, I mean, the trend now for quite a while already is that, of course, the planners already book their hotels. The hotel is something that is kind of already in place. And from that point onwards, they're looking for potential offsite venues. They're looking for other services. But yeah, the big chunk of the budget is indeed accommodation and offsite venues in this specific matter. To then step in as, for example, me as a DMC, the negotiation part a lot of times is over, but the moment that it's not over, you can still support the planner in a lot of things in terms of negotiation. The local hotel that they have contracted, if they're still in the contracting phase, the amount of times that we book that specific hotel is, of course, so much higher, which goes back to buying power and negotiation power. When you bring in a DMC with all of that direct and direct relationships with people in the hotels, it's so much more common to reach maybe a better agreement even with the hotels if you have that specific relationship. Now, of course, that also depends on the culture and on the people. And I've lived in Spain for a while. I'm not saying that business is done over lunch is still something that is really big in Spain, but it's an important part of it. It's relationship building. It's first enjoying time together before you go and talk business. Where in Switzerland you're right to the point and you start discussing straight away. In Holland you are probably starting off pretty direct, talking to each other, and transparency is key. So there's and on the one side there is the local relationships that you have to negotiate and to really leverage your local partners that you have. And on the flip side, there's the cultural aspect that you as a planner probably don't necessarily directly understand, especially when you go to Asia. It's so important to have that local connection with a local partner before going into that negotiation phase and understand a little bit more about the people and all of the relationships that are going on. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to say, and negotiation is key. And I think DMCs can only leverage in that and should be used more, especially because of this. I mean, nowadays, of course, the larger hotel chains have the GSOs, another acronym, but more the global salesperson that contracts for you, that negotiates for you from the hotel side. So there's not necessarily that link anymore. But when you go to offsite venues, then you definitely, I would recommend to definitely connect before you negotiate with the DMC to move on.
And even some of the specialty, I mean, the global sales only does so far when you're dealing with the very, very large chains. There's some very fascinating properties out there, boutique, that I don't know that enough attention gets paid to sometimes because they feel very inaccessible or people don't know about them. And that's especially when you're planning incentive events or really special ones around your board of directors, these retreats, you can really have a wonderful property and an amazing destination that's hidden back in this jewel, but without that kind of partnership, it's
Absolutely.
continues to be hidden.
And that's where indeed my world comes in and knows what's going on. Many times I've advised the planners about specific venues or places they go to that are announced to close down even before their event is going to take place. I mean, it's so necessary to have that local person in place that knows what's going on in a destination of your choice.
So we're kind of getting towards the end of our time together. What is the one thing we should have asked you, but we didn't?
If we stick to the subject, I mean, if there's a lot of times there's the question of should we stay on site or should we go off-site for events?
Right.
Right, and this goes back to what I mentioned before. I mean, of course, from out of a revenue perspective, I would always say go off-site. But going beyond that point, I think again it's a lost opportunity to not go off-site, to always stay in your hotel. I mean, there's the flip side of the F&B minimums that you have to reach within the property where you are, but there's always a leverage of bringing in the caterer from the hotel to an offsite venue. Go offsite. I mean, it's a no-brainer for me to experience that in a local destination, but go offsite. If the question is there, stay on site or go offsite. Another question that is not asked, if I'm happy with my family and with my kids, yes, I am. They're amazing and I love them to bits. No, but listen, in general, having that opportunity to experience the world and experience as much as possible is definitely something I recommend to everybody.
That 2-week minimum from a travel stay-at-home perspective and then back on the road, right? It's a common affliction.
So for a planner who's working with the DMC for the first time, what kind of advice can you give them?
Working with a DMC for the first time, it's all about communication. Picking up the phone is so rare in our industry. It's strange, but so much goes online and so much goes via email, messages, everything else. Staying close to your local person is so important, and to understand the local habits and everything else. Communication is key when you work for the first time with the DMC. Maybe not a smart thing to say, but working for the first time with the DMC, always send out a competitive bid. I mean, you have no idea. Ask for references is still so key in our industry, and which drives a lot of the key DMCs in each destination as well. It's the trust that they've built up in the events industry in general, in specific sectors in the event industry, is where you build your trust and relationship. So send out competitive bids, communicate as much as possible, and always reference.
And then thinking about meeting you all face to face, where is Ovation going to be at? Kind of moving in, because all the trade shows are about to happen this fall. Where can they come hang out with you all?
We of course we just did IMEX America. IMEX Frankfurt in Frankfurt last month, where we had about 16 destinations participating. At this specific moment, we have a team of 8 people, 8 different destinations, one in the Midwest and one on the West Coast, traveling through the areas to visit a lot of people. You might have seen them, you might have not seen them. Next week, the IRF, the Incentive Research Foundation, is invitational, is in Miami. Ovation Global DMC will be there as well. And then we head into the summer break, just a little bit of a break. And then after that, we head straight into IMEX America and Las Vegas as well from 12 to 14 September. And after that, it's ongoing. And, that's the gem of our work is, seeing so many people and traveling so many miles to see all of that is great. So I hope to see everybody there.
Great. So we're getting into our final question, or final questions. If you could pick only one, what is your one tip that you have for event planners?
One tip.
Yep.
I would say, and I think this is the red line through the entire conversation. The one tip is know your objective before you start planning. I mean, it's always kind of, start with a dream, but be realistic. Know your budget. And if you have those three things aligned, then you know what you want and you know where you want to go. That's, I think, the first key questions for a planner.
Great. And then our last question, do you have any new and cool resources that you want to share? Websites, blogs, books, gadgets that you recommend people check out? It does not have to be events related.
I need a new airplane movie.
Lindsay needs a new airplane movie. We once had a guy on here with the new snorkel mask. So runs the game.
Yeah. My biggest let's say help and resource that I use, and I know that a lot of people are probably quite familiar with it. If they're not, LinkedIn Sales Navigator.
Yes.
LinkedIn Sales Navigator is an eye opener for. I mean, it goes beyond looking up profiles of people and understanding if they're your first, second, or third connection and how you know them. LinkedIn Sales Navigator is a pure tool for your sales. Is a pure tool for the networking and the groups that you're in. Yes, it's focused on sales, but it goes also back to your network and to maximizing your network and to optimizing your network. That's one of my key resources in the office at the same time. What I appreciate a lot, and it's a physical resource or an association, is the Finance and Insurance Conference Professionals Association, in which it's an educational association where you meet so many planners and so many hospitality partners and event suppliers. And it's a wealth of information, and people are openly sharing all of their resources and all of the things that they're doing and how to make your life as a planner or supplier easier, and with what tools. So all of that together, I think, is definitely advice that I can give to either be at or use.
All right. Anything else? Favorite book you've read recently? Podcast you follow, of course, other than Event Icons?
Of course. If I had time to read a book, I try.
You're a magazine kind of guy, something on HuffPost?
The Daily Mail, but that's more my wife's department. But it's
the BuzzFeed top 10 list, really, Alex. I think
that is exactly it.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We enjoyed having you on here. I think, especially from the DMC perspective, it's always fascinating to have a supplier open up and really share how was work together and how we can get more involved with it. And to all of you who joined us live and those that are going to be listening along, we're always excited to have you. Remember, we record live each Wednesday at 5 p.m. at www.eventicons.com, and then we'll be available the next following Tuesday on all your favorite podcast apps. And if we aren't on your favorite podcast apps, please drop us a line so that we know where to find you, and we'll make sure that we get those uploaded lickety-split. We've got some great, exciting things. We're going to be live from WEC next week. We've got Alex and Will and I think Jahira on site in Toronto. So if you're roaming around with all the weck, and you've got the weck and gravy. We're going to be all Canadian. Make sure you come by the podcast booth and say hello. And if not, Twitter us, Facebook us, high five us on the gram. We can go there. Best place to watch live is at eventicons.com. There you can see us, all the show notes, links to the resources that Rutger shared and from our previous guests. We don't know what you think. We do this because we love to hear your thoughts, and we want to make sure that the icons of the industry are helping you get better at what you do, because then we all get better at what we do. We'll see you next week. Thanks so much.
Thank you for joining us for another amazing episode of #Event Icons. To catch all the bonus content, resources mentioned, and an invite to our Facebook and LinkedIn groups, head to www.event-icons.com. Also, let us know what you thought about this week's episode. Share your biggest takeaway. Just tag your post with #Event Icons. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you again for joining us. We'll see you next Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, right here on #Event Icons.